The sky was bright, but it felt wrong. People on the streets stopped and looked up. A massive shadow stretched across the cities, casting cold darkness over buildings and parks. Machines on the ground buzzed and alarms blared. On every screen, every phone, and every broadcast came the same chilling message: this world is ours. You must surrender or be destroyed. The voice was not human. It was mechanical, harsh, and strangely calm. The message repeated in dozens of languages. Governments scrambled to respond. Soldiers ran in armored vehicles, and pilots took off in jets. Yet no one could hide the fear that trembled through their hearts in the middle of the chaos. In the ruined streets of an old city, one man walked slowly. His boots stepped over broken glass and overturned cars. His clothes were simple, worn from hard work. He did not look at the ships with panic. He did not run. He walked as if the shadows above were part of the normal sky. His name was Rian. Rian paused in front of a crumbling building. He put a small silver object to his lips. A small flame appeared, glowing warm against the cold shadow. He inhaled and held it for a moment. The smoke curled into the air, twisting around beams of sunlight that fought through the ship's massive shadows. Around him, people screamed. Children clung to their parents. Soldiers shouted orders, but confusion reigned. The alien ships moved silently, like giants in the clouds, blocking the sun. From the smallest drone to the largest battleship, Earth's defenses seemed small. Yet Rian's calmness felt strange. Some of the soldiers who passed by noticed him and stopped for a moment. How could one man remain so calm in front of such power? He took a slow drag from his cigarette and exhaled. The smoke floated above him like a thin veil, rising to the alien ships. There was no fear in his eyes. Only observation. Only patience. Rian did not know why the aliens had come. Perhaps they wanted the planet. Perhaps they thought humans would be easy to break. They were wrong. Every being had a weakness. Humans had something the aliens could not understand at first. Resilience. He moved toward a wide street, where people were gathering in panic. Families ran in every direction. Cars honked, screeched, and collided. The streets smelled of dust, burnt rubber, and fear. Soldiers fired warning shots into the sky, hoping to scare the alien drones. Nothing worked. The sky stayed dark with the alien presence. Rian stopped by a small shop, broken and abandoned. A young boy peeked from behind a pillar. His eyes were wide, filled with terror. Rian knelt to his level. "It is okay," he said softly. "We will figure this out. You must stay calm." The boy blinked. No one else was speaking like that. Everyone was shouting, running, panicking. Rian's voice was simple, soft and certain. The boy nodded and held his hands tightly. Rian smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was a smile that said, "I will not give up, no matter what comes." He stood again and looked toward the center of the city. Alien ships were landing now, their legs touching buildings and streets. Some buildings collapsed under their weight. A loud vibration shook the ground. People screamed. Soldiers fired, but the beams of light from the alien ships cut through anything they threw. The humans had no weapons capable of piercing the alien shields. But Rian did not step back. He did not shout. He just watched. And in watching, he began to understand something. The aliens were powerful, yes, but they were predictable. Their movements were precise, their attacks measured. They assumed humans would panic. They assumed humans would run. That was their first mistake. Rian's mind worked quickly. He saw the patterns. The way the alien patrols moved in a straight line. The way the drones circled buildings. The way their communication beams glowed in the sky. He knew that with careful thought, humans could survive. Not by fighting strength with strength, but by being clever. The boy from the shop ran to him, trembling. "Are they going to kill us?" he whispered. Rian put a hand on his shoulder. "No," he said calmly. "Not if we stay smart. Not if we stay patient." Across the street, a helicopter tried to engage a hovering ship. It was instantly destroyed. Fire and smoke rose into the air. People ran screaming. Soldiers were falling back. But Rian's eyes stayed fixed on the sky. He did not panic. He did not shout. He just lit another cigarette. News broadcasts showed world leaders arguing. Military advisors debated. Some suggested surrender. Others wanted to launch all remaining weapons. Yet the aliens did not respond to threats. They only hovered, scanning, observing, waiting for humans to show fear. Rian understood something simple. Fear could not stop the aliens. Panic would not save the world. Only patience, courage, and clever thinking could. He moved through the streets, quietly guiding people to safer areas. He avoided rubble and alien patrols. Every movement was calm, deliberate. Some people followed him because of his confidence. They did not know him, but they trusted the quiet certainty in his steps. At night, the alien ships glowed above the cities like stars that should not exist. The streets were quiet, but tense. Fires burned in some areas, casting shadows against the massive hulls of the ships. Rian sat on the edge of a broken fountain. He looked at the sky and took another slow drag of his cigarette. Smoke curled into the night. He thought about the planet he lived on. Earth was old. It had survived ice ages, volcanoes, and diseases. Humans had survived famine, war, and disease. Why would they fear a few ships from the sky? The aliens were strong, but humans had something no alien had: the ability to endure, adapt in surprise. A drone hovered nearby, its lights scanning the streets. People screamed and hid. Rian stayed seated. The drone stopped, hovered over him for a moment, and then moved on. The aliens could not understand him. They could not read him. He did not show fear, anger, or hatred. He only observed by dawn. Parts of the city were quiet. Alien patrols moved in patterns, but no human had been captured. Civilians followed Rian to safe areas. Soldiers took notice of his calmness. Some asked why he was not afraid. Rian only smiled and lit his cigarette again. "You think they are unbeatable?" the soldier said nervously. "They are strong," Rian replied simply. "But they are not clever. They do not understand humans. That is where our strength begins." The soldier nodded, though he did not fully understand. Something about Rian's calmness made him feel that survival was possible, that maybe humans could fight back without guns, without ships, but with patience, courage, and smart thinking. Rian moved again, leading people through alleys and underground tunnels. He showed them ways to stay out of sight. He taught them to move quietly, to observe, and to wait. Every step was calculated, every decision careful. The humans who followed him began to feel a spark of hope they had not felt since the aliens arrived by the end of the first day. The aliens had destroyed much, but they had not won. Humans were alive. They were hiding, watching, and learning. And Rian, sitting on a high rooftop, looking down at the glowing fires and moving patrols, lit one last cigarette for the night. He did not speak. He did not shout. He only observed. Above him, the alien ships waited. Below him, humans survived. And Rian knew something simple but powerful. Fear could not defeat them. Panic could not defeat them. Only the human spirit, calm, patient, and clever, could turn the tide. And that spirit was alive. Rian inhaled, held the smoke in his lungs, and let it go slowly. He was ready for what would come next. The war had begun, but the humans had already taken their first stand. They just did not know it yet. The sky above was dark, the streets were quiet, and the fires flickered. The world waited. But one man, calm and patient, was already thinking. The humans would survive. They would endure. They would adapt. And the aliens would learn that Earth was not so easy to conquer. Rian smiled faintly, and the glow of his cigarette reflected in his eyes. The first day had ended, and the humans were still here. That was the first victory. The morning sun struggled to shine through the alien ships that still hovered in the sky. Cities were scarred, streets littered with debris, and smoke rose from burning buildings. Yet life continued, quietly, under the watchful presence of the invaders. People moved carefully, hiding when drones passed, but they adapted quickly. Survival was the only law. Rian moved through the city with a small group of civilians. Children clung to their parents, and workers who had survived the chaos followed him instinctively. His calmness was magnetic. Unlike soldiers who panicked or shouted orders, Rian's quiet voice guided them. "Stay low," he instructed softly. "Move where they cannot see you. Watch everything and do not react until you must." The humans followed. They slipped through back alleys and abandoned buildings, always avoiding patrols. The aliens had landed scouts among the streets. They moved in perfect lines, scanning with glowing eyes that could detect heat, movement, and energy. Humans had to be clever to survive. At the edge of the city, Rian spotted something unusual. A small alien patrol moved ahead, unaware of a narrow passage between two broken buildings. The aliens were tall, thin, with smooth gray skin and glowing eyes. Their limbs moved in rigid precision. Rian studied them quietly. They did not speak aloud, but emitted mechanical signals to each other. "Here," he whispered to the group, pointing at the passage. "We move here. Follow me slowly." The humans ducked and crawled through the rubble. Their breaths were silent, hearts pounding, but they followed Rian's lead. The aliens walked past, oblivious. Rian's eyes were calm, always watching, always calculating. Once the patrol passed, the group emerged into a small courtyard. Broken benches, shattered fountains, and rubble filled the space. Sunlight touched the cracked pavement. For the first time that morning, the humans felt a spark of hope. They had avoided detection. They had survived. A small girl holding a worn doll looked at Rian. "How do you know they will not see us?" she asked in a trembling voice. Rian knelt to her level, a gentle smile on his face. "Because I watch," he said. "I wait. I learn. The aliens are strong, yes, but humans are clever. That is our secret." The girl nodded slowly. Others in the group looked at him with a mix of awe and curiosity. For all the destruction in the city, there was a sense of calm that came from Rian. It was contagious. Suddenly, a drone hovered nearby. Its bright light scanned the courtyard. People froze. Some whispered prayers, others held their children tightly. Rian remained still, cigarette in hand, unshaken. The drone hovered, twisted in the air, and then moved on. "They do not understand us," Rian said quietly to the group. "They cannot read our thoughts. They cannot feel what we feel. That is our advantage." The group moved again, careful and silent, toward the edge of the city where a warehouse had survived the initial attack. The building was sturdy and offered cover. Inside, Rian instructed them to sit and wait. He lit another cigarette and observed the sky. Hours passed. Alien patrols moved in patterns, but none entered the warehouse. Rian used this time to teach the humans something simple yet powerful. He showed them how to observe movement, how to predict patterns, and how to remain calm under pressure. "Patience is a weapon," he said. "Rushing, panicking, or shouting will only lead to mistakes. Watch and learn, and you will survive." Some of the civilians nodded, others struggled to stay calm. But Rian's presence reminded them that fear was not the only option. Strength could come from stillness, from observation, from understanding the enemy. As the day continued, a small commotion outside the warehouse drew Rian's attention. A group of alien scouts had entered a nearby street. They were exploring, curious about the humans' behavior. Rian peeked from a broken window. They were tall, with long limbs. Their glowing eyes scanned everything with precision. He lit his cigarette and took a slow drag, considering the best move. The aliens expected fear, chaos, and surrender. Instead, they found a city of humans moving cautiously but confidently. Some were hidden in plain sight, others used debris as cover. The alien sensors detected motion, but humans had learned to use shadows, walls, and small movements to confuse them. Rian led a few volunteers outside the warehouse. "We will test them," he said quietly. "We will show them humans are not easy to scare. Stay close, follow my movements, and trust what you see." They moved through the street, careful and deliberate. One wrong step could alert the aliens. Yet Rian's calmness gave the group courage. They moved as shadows, blending into the debris. When the aliens noticed a small movement, it was only a decoy. Rian had taught them to mislead the enemy, to appear weak but remain strong. The aliens reacted as expected. They attempted to scan the area more carefully, their glowing eyes flicking back and forth. But humans had already moved. One patrol turned a corner only to find empty streets. Another drone hovered near the warehouse, shining its light inside. Rian stayed in the shadows, cigarette glowing faintly. The drone paused, hovered closer, but then moved away. It could not understand what it was seeing. Rian's calm, patient movements were unnerving. The aliens were confused by a human who did not panic, who did not run, who did not shout. They could sense strength, but it was not the strength of machines or weapons. It was something deeper, something they had never encountered, the human spirit. The civilians followed Rian back inside the warehouse. They whispered among themselves, amazed at how the aliens had been outsmarted without a fight. "How did you do that?" one woman asked. "I watched," Rian replied simply. "They expect fear. They expect chaos. Humans are clever enough to survive without showing either. That is why we endure." As night fell, the aliens reduced their patrols, but remained in the city. Fires still burned in some areas, casting long shadows. The humans inside the warehouse settled in, trying to rest while remaining alert. Rian stepped outside for a moment, looking at the horizon. Ships glowed faintly in the distance, their shapes massive against the dark sky. He lit a cigarette and inhaled slowly. The smoke curled into the night. He thought about the war that had just begun. The aliens believed they would dominate Earth quickly. They did not understand humans. They assumed strength came only from weapons, numbers, or size. Rian knew better. Strength came from resilience, patience, cunning, and the ability to adapt. Inside the warehouse, humans slept lightly, taking turns to watch outside. They trusted Rian. His calmness had given them hope, a rare and precious thing in times of war. Suddenly, a sound from the street drew Rian's attention. One of the alien patrols had returned. Its movements were careful, scanning for humans. Rian did not panic. He observed. He waited. Then he signaled to the group. They moved silently to a hidden exit, avoiding the patrol completely. The aliens were powerful, yes, but predictable. Their strength lay in technology, not in understanding humans. Rian had discovered a simple truth. Humans could survive by thinking differently, by moving differently, by refusing to be read. When the patrol finally moved away, Rian returned to the warehouse. He looked at the group and smiled faintly. "You see," he said, "fear is not the only choice. Cleverness, patience, and calmness can defeat what seems unbeatable." The humans nodded, some still trembling, some amazed. They had seen the first real proof that survival was possible. They had seen that humans could endure even in the shadow of invaders. Rian stepped outside one last time that night. The city was quiet, strange for a place that had seen so much destruction. Alien ships glowed softly against the horizon. Fires flickered, casting shadows across ruined streets. And Rian stood alone, cigarette glowing faintly, watching, learning, and waiting. He knew the aliens would return. They would strike again. But humans had already survived the first encounter. That was the first victory. And he knew the next steps would be even more important. Humans were clever. Humans were patient. And Rian, calm and observant, would lead them through the shadows. Teaching them the power of strategy, observation, and the human spirit, the war had begun. The aliens had strength. But humans had something the aliens could not understand, something far more dangerous than any weapon. The city lay in quiet ruins, under the watchful shadow of the alien ships. Fires burned here and there, their glow reflecting on shattered glass and twisted metal. Smoke drifted lazily through the streets, and the hum of alien patrols filled the air. Humanity was still standing, though battered and cautious. Rian moved through a narrow alley with a small group of survivors. Children clung to their parents, and adults followed him with careful attention. Every step he took was deliberate. Every glance he cast was measured. The humans had learned quickly that fear was dangerous. Calmness could save them. "We need a safe place to hide," Rian said softly. "Somewhere the aliens cannot reach easily. Somewhere we can watch and plan." He led the group to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. Its walls were strong, and the gates were rusted but still closed. Inside, the factory was dark and quiet, with machinery frozen in time. Rian motioned for the humans to sit and observe. "This is our base for now," he explained. "We can see the streets, the patrols, and the drones. We can learn their movements and think about what to do next." The humans nodded. Some were still frightened, but the calm authority of Rian gave them confidence. He moved through the space, pointing out windows with good visibility, corners that could serve as hiding places, and small exits that could be used in emergencies. As night fell, Rian lit a small candle in the center of the room. The soft glow illuminated his face and the faces of the humans around him. "Strength does not come from weapons alone," he said quietly. "It comes from patience, observation, and clever thinking. The aliens expect fear. We will give them something they cannot predict." Hours passed. The humans watched as alien patrols moved through the streets. They noticed patterns in the drones' flights and the patrols' walking paths. Every action had a rhythm. Rian explained how humans could use that rhythm against the aliens by hiding, moving carefully, and striking only when necessary. "Observe and remember," Rian instructed. "They cannot change everything at once. If we learn their movements, we can stay ahead of them." A young man named Lero, who had been skeptical at first, raised his hand. "Can we really fight them?" he asked. "They are so strong. Their weapons are deadly." Rian smiled faintly. "We are not fighting with strength alone. We are fighting with cleverness. The aliens expect humans to panic. They expect chaos. We will show them patience and cunning. That is how we fight." The humans began to practice small exercises. They moved silently from one side of the factory to the other. They learned to hide behind machinery and shadows. They learned to observe without being noticed. They began to understand that human ingenuity could be more powerful than alien technology in certain situations. Days passed. The aliens continued to patrol, often landing in small groups to explore ruined areas. They assumed humans were weak and frightened, but Rian had taught the civilians to remain unseen and to use misdirection. One afternoon, while observing the streets, Rian noticed a patrol of 3 aliens moving toward a nearby building. He signaled to a few volunteers. "We will test them," he said quietly. "We will show that humans can act without fear and with cleverness." They prepared the area carefully. Small debris was placed to make the patrol think the street was empty. Shadows were used to hide movement. When the aliens arrived, they were confused by what they saw. They detected something but could not identify it. Rian moved calmly among the hidden humans. "Remember," he whispered, "stay calm, stay quiet, and follow my lead." The aliens scanned the area thoroughly, their glowing eyes flashing over walls and broken cars. They emitted short signals to each other, trying to coordinate. But the humans had learned to anticipate. They stayed in shadows, moved quietly, and remained hidden. The patrol eventually moved on, frustrated and confused. The civilians let out soft breaths of relief. They had survived another encounter. Rian smiled faintly. "You see," he said, "the aliens are strong, but they are not clever. Strength without understanding is nothing. That is why humans endure." Rian's calm presence became a source of hope for the group. They began to move more confidently, exploring abandoned streets during quiet hours. Observing alien movements and learning how to survive, they discovered ways to use debris, buildings, and even smoke from small fires to mislead patrols. One evening, Rian gathered the group in the factory. "We must think ahead," he said. "The aliens will strike harder. They will assume patience means weakness. We will show them that patience is our strength. They will learn that humans are not easy to defeat." He explained plans for small traps, ways to confuse the aliens without harming anyone, and how to use the environment to their advantage. Humans listened carefully. Each idea was simple but effective. They realized that cleverness, not weapons, was their greatest advantage. The days turned into nights, and the humans grew stronger in confidence. Rian led small teams to observe patrols in distant streets. They discovered patterns, weaknesses, and timing. They returned with valuable information that allowed more people to survive safely. One night, while observing a large alien ship hovering near the city center, Rian noticed a small opening in its patrol routine. A group of humans could sneak past and reach a supply storage area. He gathered volunteers quietly. "This is not a fight," he said. "This is survival and learning. Watch and learn. Move carefully and return safely." The volunteers followed his instructions. They moved through shadows, avoided patrols, and reached the supply area. They found food, water, and small tools left behind. No one was injured. When they returned, Rian smiled. "You see," he said, "humans survive because we adapt. We endure because we are clever. That is our hidden strength." The humans were amazed. They had been taught to survive without confrontation, to win without fighting directly. Their confidence grew. Children were no longer trembling as much. Adults moved with caution but without panic. Rian lit a cigarette and looked at the group. "The aliens think their technology is enough to win," he said. "They do not understand patience, observation, and adaptation. That is why humans endure. That is why humans survive." The next morning, a new patrol entered the city. This time, the humans were ready. They moved quietly, using shadows, walls, and debris to hide their presence. Rian watched from a distance, observing both humans and aliens. He noticed the confusion in the aliens' movements. They expected panic, chaos, and easy victories. They did not find any. Small groups of humans moved strategically, avoiding detection and gathering supplies. They learned to signal each other quietly, to communicate without speaking aloud. They began to feel powerful in a way they had never imagined. Not because they could destroy the aliens, but because they could survive, outthink, and endure. Wyon's teachings had become a guide for survival. Every person in the group understood that calmness, patience, and observation were more powerful than panic or fear. They began to move with confidence, knowing that humans had a hidden strength no alien could predict. One afternoon, a scout drone moved close to the factory. Its sensors scanned the building. Rian lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. The drone hovered for a moment, sensing movement inside. Then it moved away, confused by what it could not understand. "You see," Rian said to the group, "they cannot read our minds. They cannot know our thoughts. Humans survive because we can think, adapt, and endure. That is our hidden strength." The group nodded. They had learned more in days than they had ever imagined. They had discovered that human ingenuity, calmness, and careful observation could overcome fear and danger. Night fell, and the city was quiet again. Alien ships glowed in the distance, and patrols moved through empty streets. Fires burned softly, casting long shadows on broken buildings. Rian sat on a high platform in the factory, cigarette glowing faintly, watching the world below. He knew the aliens would return. They would strike harder, expecting humans to break under pressure. But humans had already discovered a power that aliens could not understand. Strength was not only in weapons or numbers, it was in resilience, patience, and cleverness. Rian exhaled smoke slowly into the night. The humans around him slept lightly, taking turns to watch outside. The city was quiet, but alive with potential. Each human had learned the power of calmness, observation, and strategy. The aliens were powerful. Yes, but humans had something far stronger. They had learned to survive, adapt, and endure. That was the hidden strength of humanity, and Rian, calm and patient, would continue to guide them. He would teach them to use their minds, their observation, and their cunning to endure the invasion. He would show them that humans could survive anything, even a war with beings far stronger than themselves. The war had begun. The aliens believed they would dominate quickly. But humans had discovered something the aliens could not calculate. Humans had discovered their hidden strength, and that strength would not be broken. The city was tense. Alien ships still hovered in the sky, casting long shadows over broken streets. Fires burned in parts of the city, and smoke drifted lazily across rooftops. Humans had learned to survive, but survival alone was not enough. They needed to act. They needed to show that they could fight back, not with strength alone, but with cleverness and strategy. Rian walked quietly through the streets with a small group of volunteers. They moved through alleys, under broken bridges, and across empty lots. Every step was calculated, every glance measured. Rian taught them to anticipate, to observe, and to plan before acting. "We cannot fight them directly," Rian said softly. "Their weapons are too strong, their shields too powerful, but we can use our minds, our environment, and our timing. That is how humans win." The volunteers nodded. Some were nervous, but the calm authority of Rian gave them confidence. They had already survived small encounters, learned the aliens' patterns, and discovered ways to remain unseen. Now it was time to take the next step. Rian led them to an abandoned factory near the center of the city. From there, they could see the main streets and several alien patrol routes. The factory was large, with multiple floors and hidden rooms. It offered perfect cover for observation and planning. "This is our vantage point," Rian said. "From here, we can study the aliens, prepare traps, and guide others to safety. Remember, patience is our ally. Observation is our weapon." He moved to a high window and looked at the streets below. Alien patrols moved in precise patterns, drones hovered, and a few ships scanned from above. The humans watched quietly, learning every movement, every timing. One volunteer, a young woman named Sira, asked, "How can we stop them?" "They are too strong." Rian took a slow breath, then exhaled smoke from his cigarette. "We do not stop them by fighting head-on. We stop them by being clever, by using traps, misdirection, and strategy. Strength is not always physical. The aliens cannot predict humans who think differently." The next day, Rian led a small team to prepare their first real defense. They gathered debris, wires, old machinery, and anything that could be used as a trap or obstacle. They reinforced broken walls, created hidden pathways, and set up alarms using simple mechanisms. Humans who had once feared the streets now moved confidently, guided by his instructions. Rian explained each step carefully. "The aliens rely on predictability. We will be unpredictable. We will appear weak, but we are ready. If they strike, they will find humans who are clever and patient. That is how we win." When night fell, alien patrols moved through the streets as usual. But this time, humans were ready. Small teams hid in shadows, ready to observe and react. Rian stayed at the high vantage point, watching both humans and aliens. He lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly, his calmness radiating to those below. The aliens advanced into areas prepared with traps. They triggered hidden alarms, causing small obstacles to fall and block their path. The patrols were momentarily confused, their precision disrupted. Humans used this moment to move quietly and collect supplies. Rian observed everything carefully. "They think they are in control," he said softly to the group, "but they cannot read us. They cannot anticipate our cleverness. That is our advantage." Over the next few nights, humans refined their strategies. They learned to predict alien patrols, to move silently, and to use their environment effectively. They set small traps to mislead the aliens without harming them. The aliens were powerful, but their lack of understanding of human behavior became a weakness. Rian led another team to a supply area recently abandoned by the aliens. The humans moved carefully, avoiding detection. They found food, water, and tools that could be used for survival or defense. No one was injured. They returned to the factory with quiet pride. "You see," Rian said, "we do not need to destroy them to survive. We need to be smarter, faster, and more patient. Humans endure because we can adapt. That is our strength." The volunteers began to understand. They had learned that cleverness, patience, and observation could overcome fear and power. They had survived the first encounters. Now they were ready to act in ways the aliens could not predict. One morning, a massive ship hovered near the city center. Alien patrols moved in coordinated patterns, searching for humans. Rian studied their movements carefully. He noticed small gaps in their patrols, areas where humans could move without detection. "This is our chance," he said quietly to the group. "We will guide civilians to safer zones and collect supplies at the same time. Stay calm, move slowly, and observe. That is how humans survive." The team moved carefully through alleys, using shadows and cover to avoid detection. They guided families to hidden shelters and retrieved essential supplies. Alien patrols passed nearby, their glowing eyes scanning. But humans remained unseen. Rian stayed at the high vantage point, observing everything. His calm presence gave the volunteers confidence. They moved confidently, avoiding traps and using clever paths to achieve their goals. The humans were no longer afraid. They had discovered the power of strategy and patience. That night, Rian gathered the group in the factory. "The aliens will strike harder," he said. "They will assume we are weak. We will show them that patience is our strength. Cleverness is our weapon. The humans who survive will endure because we are not predictable." He outlined plans for future actions. Small groups would observe alien movements, gather intelligence, and prepare obstacles. Others would guide civilians to safety. Each human had a role. Each human had a purpose. Over the next few days, humans executed their plans carefully. They used traps, misdirection, and strategic movements to avoid patrols. They collected supplies, guided civilians, and strengthened their hidden positions. Alien patrols became increasingly frustrated. Their sensors detected movement, but they could not locate the humans. Rian watched from the factory, calm and observant. His cigarette glowed faintly in the dark. He knew that humans were learning faster than the aliens expected. They were discovering that cleverness and patience could overcome fear and power. One afternoon, a young volunteer named Lee Rowe returned with news. "A patrol moved differently today," he said. "They seem confused." Rian smiled faintly. "Good. That is what happens when humans act unpredictably. They rely on patterns. We change our patterns. That is why humans endure." The humans prepared for another night of observation. They moved quietly, using the knowledge gained from previous encounters. Small traps were set, paths were carefully chosen, and families were guided to safety. The aliens continued to patrol, but humans remained unseen. Rian lit a cigarette and looked at the city below. Fires flickered, shadows shifted, and the glow of alien ships filled the horizon. Yet humans moved with confidence. They had discovered their strength. They had discovered that courage, cleverness, patience could overcome fear and destruction. The aliens were powerful, but humans had something they could not understand. Strength, they assumed, was in weapons, shields, and numbers. Humans showed that strength could also be in the mind, in strategy, and in spirit. Rian exhaled smoke slowly into the night. The humans in the factory slept lightly, taking turns to watch outside. The city was quiet but alive. Each human had learned the power of observation, patience, and cleverness. The next morning, Rian gathered the group. "The aliens will strike again," he said. "We must be ready. Not with weapons alone, but with our minds, our patience, and our spirit. That is how humans endure. That is how humans win." The volunteers nodded. They were no longer frightened. They were ready. They understood that humans could survive, adapt, and endure, even against a powerful alien force. As night fell, the humans executed another carefully planned operation. Alien patrols moved into areas prepared with obstacles. Drones hovered, but humans used shadows and misdirection to avoid detection. Supplies were collected, civilians were guided to safety, and small obstacles disrupted patrols. Rian watched calmly from the factory. He knew the aliens were frustrated. They could not understand humans. They could not predict their actions. Humans were clever, patient, and resilient. That was their hidden strength. By dawn, the city had been tested, and humans had prevailed. No one was injured. Supplies had been gathered. Families had been guided to safe zones. Alien patrols were confused and frustrated. Rian lit a cigarette and looked at the horizon. "Humans endure," he said quietly. "We survive because we are clever, patient, and brave. That is our power. That is our strength. And the aliens will learn that soon." The war had begun, but humans had taken the first real steps toward victory. They had discovered the power of strategy, observation, and patience. They had learned that survival was not just about hiding, but about being clever and unpredictable. And Rian, calm and observant, would continue to lead them. He would show them that humans could fight back, not with sheer force, but with courage, patience, and intelligence. The turning point had begun. Humanity had discovered its true strength. The sky over the city was dark with alien ships. Their massive forms blocked the sun, casting long shadows across broken streets and ruined buildings. Fires still burned here and there, but humans were no longer panicked. They moved with purpose, quietly, carefully, and with an awareness that had been born of days of struggle and observation. Rian stood on the roof of the abandoned factory, watching the horizon. His cigarette glowed faintly in the dark, smoke curling upward like a thin ribbon against the heavy sky. He had led the humans through weeks of fear, observation, and clever action. They had survived small encounters, avoided patrols, gathered supplies, and learned the value of patience. Now it was time for the final test. He looked down at the streets. Small teams of humans moved carefully through alleys, guiding civilians to safer zones. Others prepared simple traps, obstacles, and signals. Every movement was planned. Every step was deliberate. Humans had learned that patience, observation, cleverness were their greatest weapons. A massive alien ship descended near the city center, sending vibrations through the ground. Patrols emerged, moving in tight formations, scanning every street, every building. The aliens assumed humans would panic. They expected chaos. They were wrong. Rian lit his cigarette and exhaled slowly. He did not shout. He did not panic. He did not move unnecessarily. His calm presence had become a beacon for the humans around him. They watched him. Learning from his patience and his courage, small groups of humans used shadows and abandoned buildings to avoid detection. They guided families and civilians to hidden shelters, moving with quiet confidence. They had learned to anticipate alien movements, to exploit gaps in patrols, and to act only when it was safe. One of the volunteers, Sierra, whispered, "Do you think they will leave us alone?" Rian shook his head. "No," he said softly. "They will not leave. But they cannot predict us. They cannot understand us. And that is why humans endure." Humans were not hiding in fear anymore. They were hiding to survive, to adapt, and to prepare. They were learning that cleverness could overcome even the most powerful weapons. They were learning that human spirit was stronger than alien technology. Rian had spent days studying the aliens' patrols, observing patterns, and noting weaknesses. He had devised a plan that did not require humans to fight head-on. They would not challenge the aliens with force. They would challenge them with intelligence, observation, and timing. As night fell, the humans prepared for the operation. Small teams were assigned to guide civilians, set up obstacles, and mislead patrols. Others would observe from high vantage points, relaying information quietly. Every person had a role. Every action was deliberate. The first part of the plan began with subtle misdirection. Humans moved through the streets in small groups, creating noise and movement in one area to draw alien attention. Patrols responded as expected, investigating the distractions. Meanwhile, other teams moved carefully through alternate paths, avoiding detection and reaching key supply areas. Rian watched from the rooftop, observing both humans and aliens. His calmness radiated through the group. They had learned to trust his judgment. They had learned that patience and observation were more powerful than panic and fear. One volunteer. "The patrols are confused," he said. "They cannot find us where we really are." Rian nodded. "Good," he said. "That is what happens when humans act unpredictably. The aliens rely on patterns. We do not follow patterns. That is why we endure. Small traps were triggered as the alien patrols investigated false targets. Debris fell, obstacles shifted, and alarms set by humans disrupted their movement. The aliens were strong, but their precision was broken by clever planning. They could not anticipate the humans' intelligence. In the heart of the city, humans guided families to hidden shelters. Children clung to their parents, but there was no panic. Adults moved with quiet confidence, following instructions and trusting in the plan. The streets were still dangerous, but humans had learned to survive without confrontation. Using cleverness and observation to their advantage, Rian studied a patrol near the city center. A group of humans was trapped in an open street. He signaled to them using small gestures they had learned to recognize. They moved quickly and carefully, slipping into cover and avoiding detection. Another patrol passed nearby, confused by shadows and misdirection. Hours passed, and humans continued to outmaneuver the alien forces. Their confidence grew. They had survived weeks of invasion, learned patterns, and discovered their hidden strength. They realized that courage, patience, intelligence were more powerful than brute force. Rian lit another cigarette and looked across the city. Alien patrols were still present, but they were cautious, frustrated, and confused. They could not understand the humans' calmness, their patience, or their cleverness. They could not predict the actions of beings who did not panic in the face of overwhelming power. That evening, Rian gathered a small group in the factory. "The aliens assume fear as our first response," he said. "We have shown them it is not. Our strength is not in weapons or numbers. Our strength is in endurance, patience, and intelligence. Tonight, we will show them the human spirit." The humans listened carefully. They had learned from him, adapted to his teachings, and grown confident. They were ready. They would not fight with strength alone. They would fight with cunning, observation, and resilience. As night fell fully, the operation began. Humans moved strategically through streets and alleys, using shadows, misdirection, and clever timing. Alien patrols responded, but they could not find the humans where they truly were. Humans guided families, retrieved supplies, and set small obstacles to confuse the invaders. Rian observed quietly from the factory rooftop. His calm presence, cigarette glowing faintly, inspired the humans below. They acted with precision, intelligence, and courage. They moved as one, each person knowing their role and trusting their own judgment. The alien forces grew frustrated. Their patrols were disrupted, their precision broken, and their sensors confused by clever humans. They had underestimated the human spirit. They had assumed fear and chaos would dominate. They were wrong. In a bold move, Rian walked toward the city center alone. Alien patrols observed him, but did not attack. They were cautious, unsure of his intentions. Rian lit a cigarette and stood calmly in the open street. Smoke curled into the sky, and his gaze was steady and unwavering. The aliens did not understand. They could detect strength, but not the quiet confidence that came from patience, observation, and courage. Rian did not shout. He did not challenge them. He only stood calmly, a single human against a vast alien force. From hidden positions, humans watched. They were inspired. They had survived. They had acted cleverly. And now, they witnessed the symbol of human endurance. One man standing calmly, unafraid, embodying the strength of an entire species. After a long moment, the aliens retreated slightly. They had encountered humans before, but never like this. They had assumed fear and chaos would dominate. They had assumed humans would panic or flee. Instead, they found calm, patience, cleverness, and courage. Rian remained standing, cigarette glowing, eyes steady. The humans around him felt a surge of hope and pride. They had survived the invasion. They had learned to adapt, observe, and endure. They had discovered that the human spirit was unbroken, even in the face of overwhelming power. The next morning, humans moved confidently through the city. Alien patrols were present, but the humans had learned to avoid them, mislead them, and outthink them. Families were safe. Supplies were gathered. The city had been tested, and humans had prevailed not through brute force but through patience, intelligence, and resilience. Rian watched quietly from the factory rooftop. Smoke from his cigarette rose into the morning air. He thought about the weeks of struggle, observation, and clever action. Humans had endured. Humans had adapted. Humans had discovered their hidden strength. The aliens had declared war, expecting fear, chaos, and surrender. Instead, they had encountered a species that would not break. A species that used patience, observation, and cleverness to survive. A species that embodied the human spirit. Rian exhaled smoke slowly and smiled faintly. Humans endure, he said quietly. We survive because we are clever, patient, and brave. That is our strength. That is our power. And no one can take that from us. The city was quiet, scarred, and still recovering. Fires flickered in the distance. Shadows moved with the rising sun, and alien ships hovered cautiously. Humans were alive, resilient, and prepared. They had discovered their hidden strength and the power of the human spirit. The aliens would learn, eventually, that Earth was not easy to conquer. They would learn that humans were clever, patient, and unpredictable. They would learn that the human spirit was stronger than any weapon or machine. Rian took one final drag from his cigarette. The glow faded as he exhaled slowly into the morning air. The humans around him were alive, safe, and confident. The war had begun, but the humans had already won in spirit. They had survived. They had endured. They had shown the power of patience, observation, and courage. The human spirit had triumphed.